Hello everyone and welcome back. Thanks in advance for watching my recap and thoughts on episode 10 of The King, Eternal Monarch. It was definitely a sad episode. If we're gonna give the overall scope of what happened, a little teaser, it's sad. And I feel like a lot of people are not gonna like this episode because of things that happen in it, but honestly, I really enjoyed it. So to get into that, let's talk about what happens in episode 10. Episode 10 starts with things that happen before the king confronts Yi Yim in Busan, which is where we ended in episode 9. So we start off this episode in the Korea universe where Detective To has finally found Kong and tries to tell him again about the parallel universes and how Lee Song-do, the murder victim, is possibly still alive, and about the burner phones. Kong isn't ready to talk to her yet, so he tells her he's on vacation and walks away. Meanwhile, in Korea, the king is searching for Yi Yim. Now that he's figured out that he's been hiding out in the in-between all these years so that he doesn't age, the king is spending more time there. He also makes a quick stop to see the detective in Korea. I mean, the only reason he was there was to quickly call her to hear her voice, but luckily she was in the bamboo forest reminiscing and missing him, so he got to see her face to face, which was very sweet and sad. Because time stops in the in-between and minutes or hours on the outside, he's having to keep track of time in there by counting so that he's not gone for too long and, you know, isn't in there for years by accident. He does lose count at one time and makes it back to his universe just in time for the New Year's celebration where he's supposed to give a speech. He shows up not knowing what day it is and hopes that he's not too late, and luckily he's just on time. He hasn't been telling anyone when he's leaving or coming back. The head court lady knows that he is off looking for Yi Yim, but they don't know a lot about what is actually happening. They just trust him and are just like, he'll be here when he's here. I feel really bad for the head court lady. This is obviously stressing her out, but she's just finally come to the conclusion that the king is on a mission and I need to respect that, and I'm going to be worried, but I'm going to trust that he has things in hand. That's kind of the vibe she's giving off to me anyway. During this time in the Korea universe, the detective is meeting up with Young and asking him what plans he has for the new year, and he tells her he's visiting Eun-soup's family and spending time with his younger siblings. Eun-soup's younger sister suspects that Young is not her brother just because he's cool but different from Eun-soup, and she knows this is a stranger and tries to out him to Eun-soup's mother, who's, you know, oblivious to the whole thing. Also, what happens during this time is I guess they're at Eun-soup's apartment, and Eun-soup's little brother, I guess, is going through his room and finds Young's gun and brings it out, which to me, that was like actually a really scary moment. Like a kid with a gun, whoo. Luckily, Young grabs the gun before anything bad happens and plays it off with the mother and is like, oh, it's just a souvenir from when I was in the military. And Eun-soup's mom believes this, but the little sister, she knows something up and she is on to him. She gives them the I'm watching you eyes. That little girl is feisty. Hopefully they'll have more scenes of her and Young later in the series. Who knows, but it was cute. In the Korea universe, the king is giving his New Year's speech. Eun-soup is very impressed by it, and we also see the Prime Minister trying to get information about what type of women the king is into from the head court lady. Very abrupt and rudely, I may say. And the head court lady obviously doesn't like this and says she won't help the Prime Minister with what she's planning, which is pretty much to marry the king after her year left being the Prime Minister. Later on, after the ceremony, Eun-soup gets a phone call from the detective Young had been working with to locate Luna. And so the king and Unsub go to the station to speak with the detective in person because he has more information about Luna. We find out that Luna was released from prison early due to the fact that she has a terminal illness. The king asks that she be found immediately so that he can speak with her as soon as possible, and also uses the opportunity to have the police look into the man that they brought back from Korea. As he suspected, he was one of the guards who was from Yi Yim's camp and was reported dead while on the run after the former king was murdered. We see a glimpse of Luna feeding a cat in the alleyway, and apparently that cat's name is Luna, and she's been using the cat's name as her real name, like she's got it on paper and stuff. So we find out that Luna isn't her real name. I feel like that was already pretty obvious, but it has been confirmed. But now, what's her real name then? That's what we all want to know now. We've now arrived at around the same time that we left off in episode 9, when time stops and Yi Yim has crossed over into Korea. Egon rides out to the bamboo forest to see if the guards have seen anyone out there, and of course they haven't, which he realizes that Yi Yim has actually been using a different obelisk entrance and calls Sung-ae to implement Plan B, because the king is always prepared. He has a Plan B, which is a social media post letting the public know he's going to be in Busan at midnight for a New Year's midnight walk. This is when the king confronts Yi Yim in Busan among the crowd of people, where he has also brought his guards and the police to capture Yi Yim. However, Yi Yim isn't alone, and his men come to his aid and shoot at the king and use people outside as human shields to then escape with Yi Yim, because they know the king's not going to let these innocent people get hurt. During the shootout, Unsub gets shot in the back, protecting the king. Luckily, he's wearing the vest that Young told him to wear at all times, so he just has a few pulled muscles and is fine, but that was so scary. I was like, no, Unsub! While holding Unsub very calmly, the king tells the guards to gather all CCTV footage so they can see everyone involved in the scene, find Yi Yim, and also hide the fact that Yi Yim is alive. The prime minister, hearing about the shootout and the supposed appearance of Yi Yim alive, she calls to confront the king and ask if what she heard is true. I feel like I'm not explaining that conversation the best, but pretty much he tells her Yi Yim's dead and don't look into it and don't tell the people. So after he's escaped, Yi Yim meets up with the bookstore owner at some abandoned building leading into a very creepy tunnel, where the bookstore owner tells him about the prince visiting the bookstore, how he thinks it was by accident. He doesn't think that the prince knows, but wanted Yi Yim to know. Yi Yim tells him not to worry about it, but he does seem suspicious about why the prince was there or how he even found the bookstore. Back in the Korea universe, Young is investigating Kong and sees his mother outside of the address that he has on a sticky note, and he recognizes her as her doppelganger who he has seen working in the palace. It seems he's connected that, but doesn't know exactly what's going on there. But since he does know that Kong is from Korea and his mother works in the palace, I mean, Yi Yim has to be behind it, right? Later on, Young, Kong, and the detective meet at the hotel to go over the cases and piece everything together to figure out who is who, what is what, who's in the universe, who's actually dead, who's alive, and they decide they need to go visit the girl who murdered her roommate, since she's obviously connected to Yi Yim and to Korea, and the fact that she was obviously going to replace her doppelganger there. And so they decide during this little huddle meeting that that's the next plan of action. This is also when Young and Kong have a little spat, and Young almost outs Kong to the detective that he is a doppelganger because the detective doesn't know yet. Luckily, she was a little oblivious to the conversation, but yeah, that almost happened in this scene. In the Korea universe, the king is catching the head lady up on everything that is going on with Yi Yim, and they call a press conference to pretty much stick to the story that Yi Yim is dead, but the shootout that occurred was caused by followers of Yi Yim, and those followers are still out there, and the king and the court are looking for them. Back in Korea, Kong and the detective go to visit the girl who murdered her roommate and who was obviously working to replace her doppelganger in Korea. And they pretty much go to try and convince her that they know that they have her burner phone and to get her to tell them everything. And she denies. As they're leaving, Yi Yim's guy is actually going to park at the prison, and he sees them and immediately backs up and like, oh yeah, I wasn't meaning to stop here today. Whoops, wrong turn, because he doesn't want to get recognized. Kong does notice him quickly parking for a second and then backing out, and thinks that the car looks like the same car that was outside the restaurant that he was at with his boss, that he did feel like we're taking photos of him or something was suspicious there. So with the help of his boss, he's able to look up the license plate, and he starts to find out who owns the vehicle to see if they can find out who it is. We also find out in this scene that apparently Park Won-sik, that's the boss, his wife, and her suspicions that he's lying about where he is at night is true, because we see him ask one of the other police officers, hey, I was out with you drinking last night. Just, my wife asks. They ask him, where are you actually going? And he kind of says, well, it's solitude. He's just getting some me time in there. I don't know if I can fully believe that just with everything going on. Like, he could be a doppelganger, but also sometimes you just want some alone time. Why he can't communicate that with his wife and has to lie about where he's going, that's a whole other, they should go to couples counseling to deal with that, but we do find that out in this scene. Meanwhile, in the Korea universe, it seems that with what happened in Busan, some of the government officials are worried. So they go to visit the prince at his home to ask him for guidance and to also imply that maybe he should take over being king. He yells at them to get out immediately once he knows what they're there to talk about and what they're suggesting, you know, dethroning the current king. So he goes to kick them out, and at the same time, that's when the king arrives. The prince explains to the king that he was ambushed by these guys, that he didn't know why they were there, and the king believes him, thankfully. This is when the king tells him that he's going to be going after Yi Yim, and since the prince is second in line to the throne, he's going to need to stay in the palace while all this is going on for security reasons. And the prince is like, yeah, I understand, you gotta do what you gotta do. Back in the Korea universe, the detective and Kong are sitting down to eat when Kong finds out about the plate and that it's connected to a missing person. The detective isn't surprised by this, since that's usually the case when people use cars to tail people, but she does wonder who could be watching Kong and asks him who he thinks it could be. He kind of has an idea, but he deflects and actually goes to ask her where she went when she had disappeared a while back, and this is when she tells him all about her time in Korea. About Busan being the capital and how she went to look for his doppelganger but couldn't find him, but did see some of the other doppelgangers of the people that they work with. And this is when he kind of murmurs, it's because I was here. She's like, what? He's like, I'll tell you later. And this is actually when he takes her to the king's doppelganger's grave and tells her everything that he's found out so far, that he is actually a doppelganger from Korea. And he kind of proves this by mentioning that he knows who the king is, that his real name is Egon. He seemed so relieved once he told her. He should have just told her sooner, but you could tell he was avoiding it because he didn't know fully what was going on and was afraid that she wouldn't believe him or care about him anymore or think he's crazy. So all is well, because she's a very understanding, sweet person. Back in the Korea universe, after the conversation the Prime Minister had with the king, she goes to visit her ex-husband and asks him to see if he can get the CCTV footage of the shootout. Since the king had all the CCTV footage removed, the prime minister can't get access to it. And she's wanting to confirm if Yi Yim is alive or not, either to out the king or who knows what. But she goes to her ex-husband, they sort of make a deal, and he's gonna see if he can find the footage for her. This is also when some very devastating shit goes down. Yes, I cursed, that's how upsetting it is to me. It looks like the prince is packing to head to the palace, and we find Yi Yim in his study covered in blood. He's killed the prince's guards and he kills the prince. While doing this, he tells the prince he plans to do the same thing to the king, but first he's going to make him suffer and then get the other piece of the flute because that's his full mission. The king has just been told about the prince's death and they go and fly out to attend the funeral. After the prince's funeral, we see the king back in the Korea universe, surprising the detective with flowers and telling her he loves her deeply and oh so much. And you would find this romantic, except the reason that he's come to Korea to give her flowers that he's never given her and to tell her that he loves her, because he's never actually said I love you back, even though she's obviously confessed to him. It's because, well, Yi Yim just killed the prince. So he's gonna go back into the in-between and he's gonna find the bastard. And because time stops there, that means he could be gone for a really, really long time, like years. And he doesn't want the detective to think that he's just abandoned her. He just wants her to know that he loves her and will always love her, but he's gonna be gone for a while and not to be too worried. But obviously she's worried and upset. I mean, she loves him and this means she's not gonna see him possibly for a very, very long time. And I guess that's where the title of this show has come from. We don't know, but it seems that the king is going after Yi Yim hard. He's gonna go into the in-between and stay there as long as he needs to, even though his backup just died. But I think now is the time that he really needs to go and do that, and he's determined. So that's how the episode ends, with the detective devastated, crying over these flowers, and a really long, passionate goodbye kiss where they're both crying. Just the saddest tears ever. Ah, look at the tear. Do you see the tear? It's like sliding down his face as he kisses her. Oh, God. Very poignant, I must say, and very sad. But yeah, that's how the episode ends. And I know that a lot of people are probably going to be very upset about this episode because of the prince being murdered and Yi Yim basically kind of winning that whole thing when the king confronts him in Busan. But that just shows that even though the king is super smart, there's someone smarter than him, and he's a worthy adversary. But the king can do it. I believe in him. So even though a lot of sad stuff happened in this episode, the relationship between the king and the detective, it's just so sad because they're just not able to be together. I thought this was a great episode in regards to telling the story for the whole series. So happy that I watched it. The trailer for episode 11 looks cray-cray, so we've got that to look forward to. But until then, thank you for watching. Let me know what you thought of the episode down below, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Oh, I do want to bring up the Yo-Yo Kid. I didn't talk about what happened to the Yo-Yo Kid, but the Yo-Yo Kid has a moment with Yi Yim when Yi Yim is walking into the bookstore, which we don't know why the Yo-Yo Kid is there. He's my new obsession. Luna and the Yo-Yo Kid. What's going on? But Yi Yim is all trying to be all scary and stuff to the kid because he's reading King Arthur, and he's like, doesn't always have to be the good guy to pull the sword out of the stone because, you know, Yi Yim is the bad guy. And the Yo-Yo Kid's like, dude, I don't care. Can you just leave me alone so I can read my book? Even though it like thunders and you see the like lightning come out of his face, the kid's like, whatever, bro, get inside. What is going on with that Yo-Yo Kid?